All right, we're gonna get started. How about that? We're out of ice cream, so don't go back anymore. All right, first of all, we are raffling off this book tonight. Who did not get a ticket? Okay, keep your hands up when I'm done and I'll get you a ticket, all right? Well, you can put them down until I'm done. So, okay, everybody's bees flying here lately?
Yes.
Yes, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. I haven't actually been in the hives. I'm just watching them fly at this point, bringing pollen in. So that's a good thing. My printer died on me, so I had to take a picture of what I have to say here on my computer. Okay, this is our March meeting, regular meeting for the club. Some announcements, housekeeping stuff, Nucs. Nucs are on sale on the website, right? And you can do it back there this evening with Melissa. Nucs are $200 for members, $215 for non-members. But of course, you can join the club for $15 and get the $200 price. So plus all the advantages of being a member of the EMBA. So also queens are on sale. On the Nucs, by the way, I've got a lot of questions about when are they coming in. All we know is they are coming in the latter part of April to the first part of May. So somewhere, one of those Saturdays in there, okay? Now, this is weather dependent upon the location of the provider, which is near the Kansas City area. So you will get an email on the exact date that they will be there, delivered to the Danforth, to us, delivered to the Danforth Center, where our club apiary is located also. But the pickup day is rain or shine. Okay, so if it's pouring down rain or snowing, it doesn't matter. We will be there with your nuc that you have to come pick up. Okay, so rain or shine on toward the latter part of April and beginning of May. All right, queens are also on sale for $40. I believe that's members only at this point. So if you bought a nuc, you do not need a queen. All right, you will have a queen, laying queen in the nuc. Swarm sign up. You can sign up for being called for a swarm that you could capture if it's in your area or wherever you want to go to catch swarms. But you have to be a member to be on the swarm call list. This is for just catching swarms that are hanging in a tree versus swarms that might be in a structure where you have to do some cutouts or from trees. People are cutting trees down this time of year, and I've gotten several calls. I got bees in this tree, what do I do now? So you can take care of that as well. Also, mentor sign up. If you have been to our workshop, you can sign up and you are a member of this club. You can sign up to be paired up with a mentor who can help you because you'll need help. And I still need help, all right? So, but when you're first getting started, you have no idea what you're looking at most of the time, or you're afraid of what you're looking at and you jump to conclusions, or you don't take care of it when you should, you know. So I'm just saying, you need somebody that you can call on, all right? And so having a mentor that you can make a phone call to, a text to, an occasional visit, is just enormously beneficial. So, and when you're here, make relationships with people, start talking to people here, maybe find somebody in your area. Maybe they know more than you do, been a beekeeper, maybe a year more or two than you, but don't feel like maybe can't be a mentor, you know, whatever. So just find somebody, build some friendships here. That's one of the best things about beekeeping, getting to know people who are doing the same thing you are, like-minded, as you are, and help each other out. All right, I also have some miscellaneous items that I want to take care of, and I meant to put some of these out now or earlier so you can take a look at it, but I will have them out here at the end. One is someone is getting out of beekeeping and they are selling all their equipment. So they've got 6 pages of equipment. Of course, it's like 18 font and double spaced, but and there's some pictures, some extractors, solo wax melters, boxes, jars, all that kind of stuff. I will put I've made 3 of these, so I'll put these 3 out there. But if it's like the last one, don't take it and maybe take a picture of it, okay? Now, I can't vouch for anything on this equipment, okay? This is just a lady who wants to get rid of equipment. I'm always leery about boxes or frames or things like that. But extractors, you know, even boxes are fine if they're you know, look clean, that sort of thing. So I will put those out there. Also, there's someone who wants to see if anybody would put hives on his property. He said he has about 44 acres, mostly wood, a little past Warrenton, Missouri. So he's looking for anyone who wants to put hives on his property. I've also got his contact info here. Again, I've got 3 of them. If it's the last one, please take a picture of that. Also, I've got more. The Missouri Botanical Garden is hosting their annual Green Living Festival. And they believe beekeeping is part of that, which is cool. And it's on June 7th at the Missouri Botanical Gardens. One of the things that they required is certificate of insurance. And I said, well, most of our beekeepers are not going to have certificate of insurance to go participate in something like this. They said, okay, how about a waiver, which is a step down from the certificate of insurance? So if you sign the waiver, you can actually bring an observation hive. You can sell your product. If you don't sign the waiver, you can still go there and like present a little presentation, you know, about bees and beekeeping and all of that sort of thing. So again, I've got some info about that. Now, if you want to do that, I tried to scratch out all their contact info, and I'm sure I missed something. But if you're going in the name of Eastern Missouri Beekeepers Association, we want to know that you're doing that, okay? So contact me, all right, at info@easternmobeekeepers.com. I've got all the other paperwork, the waiver, everything you would need, and the contact info that you would need to be able to do that. So I will put these out there. Also, again, if it's the last one, what do you do? Very good. And you really probably only need a couple of the pages to give you some basic information on it, all right? Okay, also, by the way, wax dipping. We have a wax dipping event on March 22nd, which is my birthday. I will be 70 years old, so it's a big one. Presents are optional, all right? So, you can, or however your conscience leads you on that. That's fine. And do what? Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. And, see, now you just, whole train of thought. So we do have a number of pieces. I think we got like 90 pieces or something set up already. All the info is, what is the cost per piece? $6? $6 per piece. It cannot be oil treated. It cannot be painted. It has to be raw wood, okay? So check out the website on that and you'll get all the information you need, okay? I think I'm done. March 22nd? Okay. Isn't Bees having a bee flea market? Which means people bring their extra equipment, used equipment, whatever, to Isabee's in Fenton, and they'll be selling that equipment. So again, another way to obtain some equipment. All right. Okay, I guess that's all I have. Again, keep your hand up, and I'll give you a ticket for the book, and you can look at these after the meeting. Tom Sostman, our director of, what are you? Director of what? He's on the board. And he and his wife, Melissa, Tom went from like 2 hives because Melissa wanted them. And now Tom has like 170 hives. So he's going to talk to us tonight about spring management. And I got a sneaking suspicion he knows what he's talking about. We are going to have a Q&A. It's up to Tom if he wants to take questions in the middle of the presentation, but generally we like to save your questions because probably it might get answered within the presentation. We want Tom to get through everything, and then we will have a time for question and answers, all right? Okay, welcome, Tom Sostman.
Well, thank you guys for showing up today. I was hoping there'd be a few people here. So like Dan had said, I'll kind of do a brief introduction of myself. So it's literally my 8th season. So 8 years ago, my wife decided for some odd reason that she wanted to keep bees. Not really sure why she did that, but here we are today. And it was a good thing. This is something that I really, well, we have poured our heart and soul into. We really enjoyed it. We gained a lot of knowledge. And here we are trying to help other beekeepers like yourself along the way with this really fun journey. Roughly 8 years ago, we started a little bit of education with Jane with this bees. We took a couple of community classes there at the Community College, and took a couple of groups to work, and we kind of determined that we did want to follow through with this, even though I really didn't want to begin with. But anyway, here we are. My wife talked me into it. And that could be the story while you're children here sitting in the same room's name, right? But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So we basically doubled in size each year. We started out with 2, by the end of the season we had 8, 16, 36, 70 something, and it just kept going. So anyway, we've had pretty good success overall here the last 8 seasons. We've experienced no loss. This year is kind of something that's a little bit different, not to be particular, but I will say that a lot of the commercial operators are experiencing heavy losses. If anybody's actually heard that on reviews, it's something that probably hasn't been spread around a lot. But there's actually some commercial operators that have lost 100%. And that's not everybody. And that's kind of a big deal because the largest pollination event in the entire world is happening, what's on the tail end of it right now. It's happening in the almond groves in California. So there are a lot of companies that go out there. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that they may be a little bit less of a problem this year because they have a little bit of lack of bees. But anyway, so we're out here today. We're trying to educate ourselves and understand how to be better stewards of this great insect called honeybee. And here today, I'm going to talk a little bit about spring management. This to me is probably one of the most important things that we need to understand. How, if anybody has bees right now, what we're gonna be looking like moving forward. So just as a strong question, how many people here currently have honeybees? Okay, so, how many here have at least 5 colonies or more? Okay, so I just wanted to kind of gauge that a little bit, so I can maybe kind of, cater my talk a little bit more toward one direction or another. So anyway, here we are on spring management. So the spring's importance of honey for honeybees. So I'm going to kind of do we'll have a little bit of a list back and forth, and I'll kind of describe each one as we go along. So obviously, with the increased daylight and warmth temperatures, that's going to stimulate a lot of brood rearing. You should be seeing that right now. So anybody that knows something about honeybees, you're noticing, and on the colony size, they'd be a little bit different in size. But probably noticing, I would say, average, probably about 2 to 3 frames of brood that have been reared right now. If the colony is much smaller, maybe a little bit less. If the colony is a little bit bigger, you'll be experiencing maybe 4 to 5. Now, as the plants begin to flower, you're going to be seeing the first pollen sources come in. And I don't know about anybody else. I've seen a bunch of honeybees today, and I've seen probably about just about 2 frames of pollen. Probably came in within the last 4 to 5 days. My suspicion is it's probably a lot of maple. There's probably some elm there as well. I haven't seen any out in the wooded areas, but earlier on, we obviously a little bit of the shades. My guess is it's probably the tail end of that. But right now, we see a lot of nectar from those maple trees as well as pollen. A little bit of nectar from the elms, but particularly wood pollen. So these are the first things that come into the hive, and this is what causes those fleas are really good for production, and these girls go to hive rivers. So some of the 3 main highlights that I've got here. So assess the colony health and strength. This is what you should do right now. We understand where these colonies are at right now. That will help you determine how you're going to manage moving forward. You want to help with swarming prevention, the population growth, and if this is your goal, maximize your honey production. Now, I'll preface this a little bit with my main goal with my honeybees is not honey production, but I'm going to try to leave this where this kind of caters a little bit more. You might manage slightly different if you're managing strictly for honey, as if you are looking to increase some of your colony numbers, maybe increase your apiary size, maybe sell some of these colonies, or maybe even build a new just to use the resource hive, which sometimes is really, I think, that kind of an underdog deal. People don't really think about it, but having just a resource hive can save you a lot of money, can save you a lot of time, and it can save you a lot of anxiety too. So on some of the warmer days, I put 50 degrees downwards. I've been at conference for 50 degrees. I would also say I don't dive down into the brood nest and pull out brood frames and set okay. But you can, by popping the lid on, get a good look, trying to understand what the colony strength is, maybe having the probes of bees that are in there, having the hives early in the season, trying to understand where these colonies are at. You also want to be very, very vigilant checking for food stores. I always look at it like this. If I have 1 frame of brood, I want to see at least 1 frame of food stores, either cat honey, nectar, something like that. As these girls begin feeding these young larvae, royal jelly, they have to be stimulated to do that. If they're not with proper nutrition and doing it, they cannot rear healthy brood. So it's very important. Now, I also don't want to leave out, I just mentioned nectar or honey store. I don't want to leave out protein. Without that, we're missing 50% of the honey. So I like to look at it like this. I think that as beekeepers, we can probably get somewhat close to replacing nectar. It's not 100%, but we can get somewhat close by feeding that sucrose-based sugar syrup. But I think we have a really, really hard time with the products that are out there and actually replacing protein. There is a lot that goes into it. There's, I think, a lot that we don't understand about it too. But I think replacing that protein is very, very hard to do. Another thing that you want to look for is the brood pattern. When I say brood pattern, you will see different stage of larvae, eggs, larger larvae, and even some cat brood. So having to understand that kind of helps to determine moving forward what that looks like at the kind of that frame region, if you will. Another thing that we'll be looking for is that potentially you see signs of illness. Varroa mites, Lozema, deformed wing virus, these are a lot. And if you're a new beekeeper, don't focus on this right, okay? This is a few things I'm mentioning because I'm trying to cover a basis of beginner beekeeper and more experience. So I'm gonna mention a few of these things, but I'm not gonna hang on too long when you learn them. But these are a few different things I would be looking for. Do the boxes need to be rotated? If you run the over box management, they need to be rotated. For me personally, right now, when you run a double box, there's very few of them on the seal. I personally like the double box, obviously a little bit more time. If I'm doing time on something, that really offers me, you know, a little bit of leeway when it comes to that. So I personally like double box. I am not flipping anything anymore. I still feel like March is one of those things that comes in like a line, and you just never know what's going to happen. I'm always looking 2 weeks out to see what that looks like, to understand how I'm going to do it. But for right now, I have not flipped anything in. So, and I was just a bunch of time today. The next thing is something we all really look forward to, but that's, you know, we can have it come out of winter time. You have a comment as a dead out, there's bees themselves, you know, you might see a little bit of mold on it, and we should brush them off, straighten the frames down, and then get them back to where you can either freeze them, those frames, we just have a handful of them, you can store them in place, but you can pre-buy the pest into them. Particularly, you know, the lesser black small. Those could be, those are like that discussion with fruit grains and have those proteins left behind. Okay, so now we're going to mention a little bit about spring feeding. Some people are not big advocates of it, and that's fine. I really, if I have to, I'm doing it for a purpose and for a reason. I hear a lot in the early spring on social media, people ask, what should I be feeding? And I'm like, well, personally, I think you're asking the wrong question. Why are you feeding? And you want to understand the purpose of why it's the feeding. You're feeding because the bees need something. If the bees don't need it, you don't need it, right? Seems pretty simple, but I think sometimes we get stuck in this rut where you have to do this, you have to do that. It really again depends on the management side, but particularly again without having the proper feed in the colonies this time of year in March and early April. Probably the times that you can potentially lose a lot of bees because you're not paying attention to your food source. That is very, very important. Make sure to pay attention to how many frames of cat honey and or syrup. Make sure that you put them in there. I'll say it again. I look for 1 to 1. I'll see a frame of brood. I want at least 1 full frame of the cat honey, open nectar, something of that nature, because they can go through very, very quickly. Okay, so now we're talking a little bit about some of the pollens and things of that nature. This time of year, coming into it, Missouri has a great, I think we have one of the better sources of pollen, and the diversity of what we have in this state is pretty broad. There might be different areas of the state from time to time we may notice thirds on that. But again, moving through most of the spring, particularly in the St. Louis area, I have never really noticed a strong need for having to have pollen substitute. Now, I've said that, but I actually focus more on growing bees than I do work on honey production. So I want to stimulate my bees as early as I can without pushing them a little too much, and keep them stimulated on those days when you have cold spells, the days where you have rain, things of that nature. I will usually use a small pollen pad when doing it. But I would also caution people, if you're going to use a pollen patty, don't put it on there and expect that 2 weeks later you come back. We have a lot of hive in this area. The hive will flourish on protein substitute. So be very, very cautious when you're actually using that protein in there. It is something we should use. I'll briefly hit on some sugar syrup. So sugar syrup, you'll hear people talk about 2 to 1. This is by weight, by volume, and 2 parts sugar, 1 part wine, or 1 to 1, or 3/4 to 1. Nectar probably comes in or comes off the plant probably closer to a 3/4 to 1 than it does anything else. So it's very light, very water. That's great for stimulating queens. It's great for stimulating wax glands on the middle-aged bees for wax production. 1 to 1 does the same thing, but it also will cause the colonies to create a little weight at the same time. 2 to 1 adds a lot more weight. It's a stimulus. You're not going to stimulate these as much as that 2 to 1. I generally only focus on that at the times that I need to have weight to the colony. Most of the time, it's late in the fall, that's what I'm looking to do, is if they add weight for winter, I'm usually using the 2 to 1. Right now, you can probably get out of the room just fine, so if your bees need some feed, I would probably be looking toward the long term. They're gonna be stimulated with that, continue to rear brood, and they're gonna some feed as well. Again, I'm kind of this is how to substitute, I'm not gonna hang out with that too long. Okay, so when to stop feeding? People will say, well, should I continue to feed? I'll tell you what, bees will stop feeding on sugar syrup when nectar is available. It can be one day they're taking it, the next day they're not. As soon as these plants, these flowers open up and the bees find something from Mother Nature, they're going to prefer that over anything else. And actually, bees will prefer nectar over stored honey as well. It's a little bit more nutritious for them. A little bit actually a little bit better for them too, as a matter of fact. So bees are always going to favor nectar over that. So as soon as the honey supers are on, this is a good point. If you're a new beekeeper and you got to the point where you go to double brood box, you have all your frames drawn up, you have plenty of stores inside there, you got to the point to where we got to the main nectar fill, you're putting honey supers on. Do not continue to be sucrose or any type of artificial sugar. At that point in time, I think we had a story in the time where a lady came into the in the middle of the season we have with the we call it extracting games, where club members can come in and use the equipment that's there and extract the honey. Well, unfortunately, one lady brought back, we kept looking at it and said, well, this is really light, extremely light. She said that somehow one of the board members happened that she continued to feed sugar syrup the entire time. And we're like, you know, you really don't believe that. You have to tell somebody, hey, I'm sorry to say this, but that's not me. I mean, don't get me wrong, sugar tastes great. I love it. Eat a lot of it, but unfortunately, it's way too honey. So, you know, keep that in mind. Don't continue to feed sugar syrup when you've got to your honey supers. Again, I mentioned a little bit about hive beetles along with the pollen patties. Okay, so I don't want to hang out with you too long on this, but I would at least mention some of these things. These are a few different things that are worth mentioning. So spray missions you can have. If you haven't corrected your grow issue in the fall, potentially you can have a little bit higher level of mix. The best method I think that we have as beekeepers to test what our micros are is you'll hear like your alcohol wash and your sugar shade, there's other method you can use on this soap method, which is what I use. That combination of the word to understand where my goes. Hopefully, at this point in time, if you overwatch with these, you already have that issue. The upper right-hand picture there is actually one of that. I was down in Florida last year with a friend of mine's house, and we were on campus. And we were down there just to see what it is. That's actually film proof, by the way. And we were finding sunlights, and those are the areas of the program. So are going to kind of hang out on this a little bit, and they're going to want to attach themselves to the drone group itself. They'll actually do that. They'll prefer that over the worker group, as a matter of fact. So that just kind of gives you an idea. It's not a guarantee, but it kind of gives you an idea. If you see some evidence from some of the drone group deal that potentially have a few lights in there, and again, it might be a good idea to do an alcohol wash or something of that nature. Just to figure out what you might do. Small hive beetles, I mentioned that a little bit. Lower right hand corner, those are the pests that we all love here in Missouri. They seem to do well here for whatever reasons, and sometimes people grow those more than they grow bees. So again, the idea is not to do that. So careful with the person. Nosema, that's something that looks like diarrhea on the front side of the box, looks really nasty. That can be a problem this time of year. Now, I only experienced it a couple different times myself. It is something nasty, has a power to it, as you can imagine. And that actually is an issue that sometimes the honeybees can have coming out of winter when we haven't been able to relieve themselves. You can have potential European foul brood and American foul brood. These are a couple of issues. I've never seen American foul brood in any colony in my life. Actually, you can see it at all. So I understand what it looks like by pictures and by the studies and show you how to understand what it looks like. Thankfully, I've never seen it because that's something there that you would actually have to burn any type of colony to use. It's not something that you can treat and you can live with, unfortunately. Whereas European foul brood, you can actually correct. Again, I mentioned a little bit with monitoring treatment with regular night washes. And then, if you want to, treatments as necessary, there's gonna be a lot of different products for the treatment. All of them have flaws. There's always a trade-off when it comes to treatment for mites, what time of year is, what's the heat like, is it cat brood, is it not cat brood, and there's a lot of different treatments out there. Some are organic, some are synthetic, some are just mechanical. You can do like fruit breaks and things of that nature. But all these are different treatments that you can actually use. So I don't know if anybody's ever seen any signs of hygienic behavior within a colony, but this is exactly what it looks like. So when you have, some people might know this VSH or gorilla system hygiene. You might have heard Missouri mite hunters, you might have heard SMR. There's a lot of different mechanisms they use for talking about hygienic behavior within honeybees. But this right here is exactly what that looks like. So basically, in short, what that is when you have stress brood that are in the cavities, maybe from varroa mite or an illness or disease or something like that happening, when the bees actually have this trait set and this hygiene trait set within their DNA, they can actually become very hygienic and understand when they smell beneath the cap brood that there's something wrong. They'll actually uncap it and potentially pull the sick larvae and or pupae out and discard it from the box. So this is something that you might have heard of. BSC, there's a lot of these photographs. There really isn't a standard in which to measure by when it comes to that. And as far as when people are sending BSC colonies and things like that, I've kind of wished there would be. It would kind of help me in the playing field because anybody can say, well, I have BSC 20. Well, until you actually see that activity happening, I mean, it's just all talk, right? So anyway, this is kind of what that looks like a little bit. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this right here, but this is actually what you call the form wing virus. This actually was a picture taken, most of these pictures are from me. So this is one that I took on a cutout. I did over in Wildwood, Missouri, as a matter of fact. And as soon as I opened it up, normally my wife and Melissa and I do this together. We'll start working through kind of the colony. And as soon as I started getting into this colony, I quickly realized it was an issue. So typically we'll bring up the previous brood, a little bit of honey, and we'll try to relocate out. This one, I did not do that with. As a matter of fact, I can tell that there was a lot of issues with the brood, and then I came across this. This is the form wing virus. This actually is a virus that is transmitted directly from a varroa mite. So, we always talk about what we did with the varroa mites, and it's great. It isn't specifically the varroa mite itself and the bites itself that causes the problem. The problem we see is these little pests are the ones that are bacteria. All of these viruses and diseases, they can easily transmit to honeybees. That's what the problem was. Is when this happens, and this time it wasn't make it, I knew it wasn't. I always quarantine every cup, but I quarantine this in my unquarantined yard somewhere else because I didn't want to hear any of the other colonies that I had. And this can be, again, a direct correlation to the high mite loads that a colony can have. When it's got to this point, I'm not saying it can't be corrected, but it may be hard to do. This right here is exactly what I mentioned here earlier. Nosema. This is what it looks like. There's actually two different types. They're both actually a fungal infection, and it can cause dysentery within the colony. This is actually a pretty serious picture of what that looks like. Sometimes colonies can work through it and actually do okay. This colony, I don't know, this is not my picture, so I can't say for sure what happened here. Yes, you can treat it with an antibiotic. I've never tried to do that, but again, I've only seen it a couple of times. Sometimes it's a big nutrition, you get it right out of it. But this would be probably coming right out of that if I have this.
Is it also caused by the varroa mite or what causes?
No, that's not actually. So the honeybee actually won't let it get inside the house. So when they've actually been cooped up in the entire winter, say from November, December, with no fly days, that can cause an issue with the gut. And actually, there's certain types of stored honey that can actually sometimes even cause us to that. I think there's more mineral contents in the honeys that are there. That's why I have no problem actually feeding that sugar syrup itself. In areas where you start to see like you get to the northern states, Canada, where they have to stay in the shed for 6 months, it's probably more common here to see something like that. Again, I've only noticed it a couple of times in the colonies, but if you were to see it, you can see it right. But the lack of flight and the lack of being able to leave themselves does not help the situation at all. I don't want to hang out here too long, but I thought it was worth mentioning, because we're actually going to have, some presenters this year in the middle of the season talking about some of these issues and stuff too. This is actually what European foul brood actually looks like. This one is actually a bacterial disease. It does affect the larvae in there. You can see actually in the center one there where it's kind of black, kind of curled up a little bit in the cell. That one's actually treatable. You can actually, again, this has to be administered by a veterinarian. And I actually am not aware of any around here. There might be one that does it, but there's a lot of veterinarians that actually won't actually administer or actually prescribe terramycin. So if I was actually to do this, I would remove some of the affected combs, potentially reclaim, but sometimes good nutrition can actually clean them out of this too. This is definitely not as detrimental as actually American foul brood. Whereas again, bacterial affects the larvae. One of the key ingredients I would say, if you thought that you have this, the first thing I would do is call somebody who's actually seen this before and find out from them, and I need for attention policy makers. They're actually able to come out and do a test on this and figure out what that looks like. But a very easy solution would be taking a toothpick, you can stick it down the cell, swirl around, and when you drag it out, it almost springs off of it. That's too low. When it springs from out of the cell, that's a really, really good indicator. Again, I've never seen it here in St. Louis, and I actually don't really confirm cases within decades. Some of the guys in the back have been doing this for a long time. Might have seen it before. I see John shaking his head. So, again, hopefully we never see this. You know, you can see again, the larva becomes really ropey. Is definitely how we can see it. Close this colony up, and unfortunately, you see the treatment right there. It sounds, you know, horrible, but the only way to solve it is to burn the entire colony, leaves and everything. It's just the spores are there and they can remain present for decades. So there really is unfortunately treatment for it. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about the honeybees and managing the growth. So some of the causes that you notice in the swarming would be overcrowding inside there, particularly in the broods. There's a lot of forager bees and your nurse bees in there, and there's not a lot of ring left. This can often trigger that swarming that happens. The queen age, this is something that we want to pay attention to. Not always is a 1 or 2 year old queen good or bad. Sometimes I've actually had before where I got really baby queens, and it seemed like later in the summer it's kind of fizzle out, and we were having got really poor. You think, well, it was only a 1 year queen. I shouldn't be replacing. You replace the queen not just on age. I would replace you more on performance than anything else. Brood pattern spotting, replace the queen. You will cater to a poor queen, and I'll tell you what, the only thing it's going to do is take that colony on board. Pay close attention to what the brood patterns look like, and I've got a couple pictures in this slide moving forward showing that. Genetics, talking a little bit about the DSH, varrosis and hygiene, you know, more of a common behavior. The one thing I hate going for a colony is when I open it up, I see bees running everywhere. They're scattering, they run all the place, the queens running frantic. This is not something that I try to propagate within my own colonies. Now, from time to time, you'll see it kind of spray and move along. But if you constantly have these colonies where the queens, as soon as you bring out some light, she's running around crazy and it just looks like a chaotic mess. This is something that I try not to focus on, and I try not to rip queens off of any of these myself. It can be a problem, it can be a management problem. It's a pain in the rear end to try to go through conflict business. Okay, so now you want to, some of the prevention methods we can talk about a little bit. Adding another brood box to the single and supers to give them more room. This can sometimes lessen the tendency a little bit with the colony. It's not always an entire fix, depending on where they've gotten to. Do you have a queen, or you have these bees of already your queen cells and they're capped? I'd be looking for a queen at that point. Because often you get to a capped queen cell, those bees that could have already flown to at that point in time. But sometimes it is possible to turn around chains of running. Often, if I get to the box and see it, I just move the original queen away. I don't see these bees hit the trees, and it's not really going to take that colony apart, and I'll make a bunch of splits off of that queen. I've heard people talk a little bit before in the past about, you know, you shouldn't be trying to rear queens, swarming queens. I kind of heard that term before, swarming queens. I don't disagree with that, but what I will say is, if the time of year is appropriate, and you have other colonies that are building queen cells, and it seems the timing is right, where we've gotten to a point in which where these colonies are getting to that, their buildup mode, they're getting to that swarming tendency, and other colonies are in that same mode. This would not be rearing that same genetic being swarm, because it's the tiniest conflict. Now, if you get to a point where this is the only colony that's trying to swarm and all the rest of them aren't, yeah, at that point in time, I probably would try to propagate from that, because potentially you could be creating some swarmy colonies or swarmy queens, and those can become a management nightmare. Mentioned splitting hives. This is something that I do all the time. Usually past June, I don't usually do a lot of colony splitting, but we do a lot of splits in the early spring, just to build our own colonies. Again, I bought them double in size every year. We also saw a lot of nucleus colonies. We started new yards every single year, usually 1 or 2 every single year. Just like I move things around, but this is one thing that I'm huge on, is splitting. Removing queen cells potentially, that will help. Again, I kind of mentioned that a little bit. That will help with the swarming impulse, unless you've gotten to a certain point. So now we're talk a little bit about hive expansion here. That column is on the upper right hand side, and you can barely see the frames in there. That box is done. At that point, I want to do a deeper dive inside that box to understand what that looks like for them. So, when to add brood boxes. I hear people talking about, well, at what point in time I've gotten to say a nucleus colony, I've installed it from 10 frame box, and it's gotten to a point where it's starting to build up. When do I add the box? Now, I'll say this, with beekeeping, there's very few absolutes, and I'll say even the 80-20% rule is not an absolute. If you got to the point where they're heavy enough to throw, these colonies are growing quickly, say you got to like 70-75%, good enough. Doesn't have to wait until that 8 frames form. If you've gotten there, I'm telling you, that's a good time to add a box. I would not split the brood nest right now with the temperatures that we're having. So if you've gotten to a point where, hey, you know what, these colonies are looking really full on the bottom, you don't see any capped drone cells in there, or capped drone cells inside there, I probably wouldn't worry about it a lot, because honestly, when a colony hits a point where they are actually putting a lot of drones in there, that's the point in which they're ready to start repopulating. So right now is just not a great time to be focusing and worry about that. We're still on that early spring buildup. Now I don't know a lot of those first years to start emerging and start hatching inside the colony. But again, an 80% rule is a pretty good rule of thumb. You've got 8 out of those 10 frames still. At that point in time, you can add another box, bring a couple frames up to that center, keep them stacked on the top of each other, and separate the brood off to one side. Again, you can still have blue lines, even in the middle of April, it's very possible to have that happen. You separate the brood up, and you take 1 or 2 frames, you don't have enough bee coverage out there, and you get a really cool or cold night. That can actually, and it can have a really hard time thermoregulating. If that brood is not kept at about 93 to 94 degrees, it will actually cause language to it now. So again, we're still a little bit early for that. By the time you got probably about the first week or so, maybe the second week of April, you're going to start to notice where you probably want to bring some more frames up. Or if you get current colonies, you might reverse those boxes. That would be a good idea to keep that clean. Okay, so now when to add super. Let's just suppose you've got two brood boxes completely full down below. You've got that second brood box roughly that 80%. That is a great time to do it. Now, people talk a little bit about clinics here, when to use it, when not to use it. Some people love it, some people hate it. I know my buddy there in the back, he's a guy that doesn't like clinic leaders, and that's great. I happen to use them, but the one thing that him and I both agree on when it comes to that is I don't use a clinic splitter if I have a box of undrawn home. If I just have straight foundations, I don't put a clinic splitter on, because sometimes the bees can kind of view that as a barrier or a ceiling. They may not want to move up into those upper boxes. So wait until, put that super on, let them start drawing that comb out, give it a week or two, and start noticing, say the center frames got a couple of few frames of already drawn. They kind of understand that that's their space. They're going to occupy. At that point in time, if you choose to use a clinic splitter, go into that super, make certain that the queen that move up there start laying, because you don't want to trap her up. If by chance you did, not a big deal. Find the queen, relocate her back down the bottom, put your queen splitter on, then put your honey super back on. As soon as that brood emerges out of there, those bees will immediately backfill everything. Not really a problem. If you choose not to use a clinic splitter, that's great too. I know a lot of people that produce great honey crops with them and great honey crops without them. So again, that's one of those tools, if you will, that really is not, it's not that big a deal. You know, you can choose to use it, you can choose not to. This is just a picture I thought I'd throw in there. This is of a new frame where bees were drawn up beautifully white comb inside there and then capping it off. And sometimes this can happen within a couple of weeks. If you have a really strong, robust colony and they are in the mode of drawing comb, sometimes the thought that I do is I won't even super them up for honey production. I'll start putting boxes on, let them really bunch of comb because again, I cycle a lot of amount of ability to do this colony. So this is a great resource to have too. So if you're like, hey, you know what, I feel like in my other couple counties I have been doing really good, but I really need some newer colonies that I cycle out, which I think is a great idea. You know, let them draw another deep box of comb for them. Maybe put some extra honey in it because you never know. You know, if your person doesn't want to feed, maybe you can take these combs out, freeze them later on, after they cap them off, give them back to them mid-season. You know, so there's a lot of different ways to manage things. This was actually, so last year, did anybody buy nucleus colonies to be NBA? Two people? Well, one of your colonies is sitting right out there in the field. That we landed all these a few days before you all picked them up that day. And so there was, I think, 274. There's actually a bunch of them behind me too that you can't see. There was like 274 colonies out in this field, along with like 35 and 36 of my production colonies too. So anyway, just kind of a fun picture. Okay, so I'm going to kind of hit this briefly. I gave a presentation down in Southern Missouri earlier about just making splits and different methods to do so. So there are a lot of different methods that you can do. One of them is called the queen excluder method. You'll have the walkaway split, double springboard method. So just kind of briefly hitting on each one of those. On each one of those. So let's just suppose you want to use the queen excluder method to make a split. You have a double deep column, and what you can do is some people are really sketchy about wanting to handle queen or they have a hard time finding. You know, this for whatever reason your eye is not drawn to it, you're like, never found an easy, sure-proof method of finding queen if you want to make a split. What you can do is, if you have an empty box, you're going to separate your top box from your bottom box. You're going to put a queen excluder down. Take another empty deep box, set it on top of the original column. Now you can go through each one of those frames, shake the bees into the top of that empty box. What it happens is, this is an easy method, again, that you can find the queen, because the queen cannot get back down through it. You start shaking bees in there, eventually those bees can start pushing their way down through this box. The idea is you find the queen, she's sitting on top of there, you can remove the queen excluder, whatever way you see fit to it. I pick them up, put them down in the bottom box, and you can put your queen excluder back down, put your box back on. If you found the queen in a couple of shakes, you don't need to shake all the bees down inside. So what I'm trying to do then is I'm trying to equalize my colony. So by about, let's say, first week, second week of April, I want to see it, and you still want to produce a honeycomb, I want to see at least a solid, really good frames, 4 frames of brood in that box. What I'll do then is I'm going to leave plenty of food stores, pollen, nectar, honey down there for them as well, right? I can take that excess brood in there and I can use that for my split. Keeping in mind that I still have enough brood, the queen's still in the bottom box, and at that point in time, now I can take off, if I get extra 2 or 3 frames, I can use those frames to make a split. You have a new box ready. When I'm making a split, I can have 2.5, sometimes 3, depending on how the temperatures are at night. If it's really cold still, I probably need 3 with extra shipping bees. Again, talk about thermal regulation. You need to be able to keep the brood nest at about 94 degrees. Without bee power, you cannot do that. So, and then I'll put a frame of honey in or food, something that has some great pollen there, and then at that point in time, you can do that little split, whether you want to use it as a split, start another colony, start a bee yard, add to your apiary, maybe you want to use it as a resource hive. There's a lot of different ways you can add these to it. You can do this walkaway split method, where you have plenty of young larvae and eggs in there. Let them grow their own thing, it's naturally do that. You can introduce queen some of that time. You can do a virgin queen, you can do a baby queen. I really don't want to get into how to do that, but there's options about there. The walkaway, that's the easiest one possible. You can literally look up to double the colony as long as it's brood, food, in both boxes. You can actually take that entire column, split it in half, set it on another bottom board, put a lid on it, and walk away. It is literally that easy because it doesn't matter where the queen's at. One of those is going to have the queen. The one you split off the top, or the other one, it doesn't matter. You can come back in 3 days, whichever colony has the queen cell being built, that's the queenless colony. That's a really, really easy way to do it. Under a good method flow feed early in the spring, this is an easy method to do. So if you want to increase your apiary numbers and you feel like you don't have a lot of skill set, or maybe you're a little bit less confident about it, walkway split, it works. I've done it before, it's not my preferred method, but I've done it plenty of times before. Double screen board, some people really don't know, I haven't really heard this. Some people use it, but it's not as widely used. Double screen board, basically what it is, 3/4 inch piece of plywood. You have a screen on top, you have a couple of holes, you have an entire center, and you have a screen on the bottom. Basically what it does is it keeps the queen, or it keeps the workers separated from one brood box to the other one, so they can't touch the proboscis, they can't transfer that queen pheromone back and forth. When that happens, the other box, if everyone the queen is not in, will realize it becomes queenless because the queen pheromone is going to slowly start to dissipate in there. And at that point in time, again, you can, again, just setting that in the middle of there, you can figure out which one's queen. Come back in 3 days, 4 days, whichever one has to do starting. That's what the queen is not. So again, that's another real simple one. Now, this is one that I put in there for a gentleman that asked me about it. So the demo-ray method. So I mentioned earlier, I actually don't manage my colonies for honey production. I get plenty of it. It's not a problem. We sell a lot of it, but I don't specifically manage for it. I have never used the demo-ray method. I understand it. I've heard people talk about it. People have different modified versions of doing this, and there's some different methods that you can do when you use the demo-ray method itself. Okay, so this actually is another one that can be used for preventing swarming. There's a lot of people here. I think I heard John Fox talk a little bit about it before. Where I think he said he's built like 100-something pound crop per year, almost 200 pounds. Is that right, John? 235 pounds of honey off of one pound. That's impressive. I would say that is definitely something that doesn't happen often. He probably managed that colony so well that the bees were just absolutely going to be the time of the year, the nectar flows, they just probably perfect because again, it would be hard. I never go to 235 pound crop of honey, but I just let my bees so much. I wouldn't get a chance. So obviously it's no we're stuck in the first year being out of the nucleus colony, probably not going to happen. But again, it's something like your goal is to actually build large honey crops with your colonies. I mean, it is doable. There's certain areas like you go up to the canola fields in Canada, those guys probably produce 200 or 300 pound crops of honey on a daily, or not a daily, but per season average. I mean, these guys can produce a lot. So it really depends on the nectar source, what's hitting, how much nectar is producing, all these great things. Okay, so let's break into the demo-ray method a little bit. Obviously, people probably read it. So obviously, if you have say 700 word frames brood, again, not lower than still split it, I usually put about 4 in one. But if you got to the point where I have even read some things say 6.5 to 7 frames of brood, the nest becomes congested enough that potentially the swarming impulse starts to be really creative with that colony. Again, like I said, there's probably usually absolutes. Some colonies they want to swarm before that, so maybe once to swarm after that. So the idea is in that very, very bottom box on the left-hand side, that's where your queen is going to reside. You can see the red frames that are in there, those are all your brood frames. The empty ones are the real dark colors on the outside. The stores or the honey are going to be the ones represented in yellow. Now the queens are in both boxes, still in the bottom. Okay, so you want to keep the queen in the bottom box. What you're going to do is strip all but I think 1 frame of open brood that's in the bottom box. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep the nurse bees which are going to mainly be on your brood frames. A lot of open brood, but a little bit of captive brood, but mainly your open brood frames, that's your nurse bees going to have something. When that HB and your older forager bees commingle a lot together, when they have the sprouting sensation, that's what can create that swarm impulse. So what you're trying to do is trying to separate those bees a little bit so that there's feels congested inside there, and they can still transfer that queen pheromone inside the box. So you're going to leave 1 frame of open brood at the bottom. You're going to use a queen excluder. You can see it represented on the right-hand column as the QE. You're going to use a queen excluder inside there, and then you're going to add potentially your two supers that you have. I would say this, hopefully with this method, you actually have a drawing. This is going to be somewhat ideal because again, with this kind of crowding, if you're going to use the array method, they would probably still work those frames, but if they already have it all home, they're going to understand that it's going very easily. So assuming that you're actually working on a drawn comb and those two supers on the side. One method actually says to put a queen excluder, depending on how you're going to manage this, you put a queen excluder on the left-hand column, you see a queen excluder there, just below the two supers itself. So if you're to move that queen excluder to the far right-hand column, right underneath the red frames above your two honey supers, the idea there is you could actually have two queens in the same colony producing honey for us. So you would actually get a monster colony. So if you had a two queen colony inside there, so you have the queen in that top box with the queen excluder, potentially you're going to end up having more than two supers. You have a two queen colony. You could have 3, 4, 5, 6 supers in there again, depending on the nectar flow. In between, you have the queen excluder on the bottom. You're keeping the queen locked away from the supers, but also away from all the rest of the other brood. Now, some of this gets into a little bit more than what I've actually ever even heard guys talking about. But I know of a couple of guys that actually utilize this sometimes for nucleus colonies and having two queen colonies for producing pretty good monster honey crops on these. So basically, the additional queen excluder will stay above the supers, like I just mentioned, and any of the remaining. Add the remaining deep with the brood above the queen excluder. So if you're actually taking the excess brood away from them that's already hatched, you're taking that away from them and only leaving that queen with like 1 or 2 frames in the bottom box. So again, you're leaving that crowding sensation in there. But the problem you have with this is I feel like you have to use a lot of lifting because you're constantly have to go back in and remove queen cells from the box where you're going to have a little bit of open brood, but a lot of meat your cat brood at. You're going to have to keep constantly removing queen cells from those, and then cycling those brood frames up as the queen continues to lay in that bottom box. You're giving them more combs inside that bottom box to continue to lay in. So again, the queen still feels like she has more room to lay in. You keep cycling about every 4 days. You cycle those frames back up to the top. Again, she's still laying. You're still creating more bee power within this colony. This is the basic method of how to do it. This really gets into where you can actually utilize that top box up there. If you want to utilize that queen excluder, you can actually use that as a queen right starter finisher up there if you want to rear queens out of it, because you have all this bee power. You can really turn this into a queen rearing system for you and produce a good honey crop. This is something, like I said, that I've never really tried before, but these are just some of the basics right here of how you would utilize the stem array method. But I'll tell you, I encourage you to go on the internet. There's a lot of great resources out there that actually really dive into details about this specific method. But the idea behind the stem array is actually to produce larger honey crops without splitting the bees. So if your goal is, I don't want to split the bees, that's not my goal. You know, I don't want to have more colonies and whatever that number is, this is a method that you can use. Okay, so I talked a little bit earlier about queen management. This right here, I think, is extremely important. I mentioned where it doesn't matter how old it is, first year, second year, if brood pattern is spotty, and it's not because of poor nutrition, it could be the queen herself actually is starting to kind of fizzle out. She wasn't made to go. You know, first these queens will come out of the gate and display these beautiful brood patterns like you see on that top frame up there. I mean, there's barely a couple of misses that are inside there. I mean, she's really laid up a side. It is possible that during the mating process, which we have to get no control over, I think sometimes we give ourselves a little more credit than we really take to you. You know, I mean, you know, there's God's a little more control when it comes to this mechanism than. We can do certain things to help ensure good mating processes. Have plenty of trouble producing, plenty of colonies that are within those yards where you might make these things like that. But all in all, there's certain things that can interfere with that. Poor flight days, windy days, cold snaps. You can have anything from 3 or 4 rain days after the queen emerges. Generally, the queen will go out and mate a couple different times throughout the course, maybe a couple or a few days, depending on the weather. But after that happens and she comes back, I've heard it talk about like this, there's actually, they have a called sperm thing, that's where all the sperm is at, stored for her entire life. So she didn't get to the point where she stored enough, and she does it off quickly, this would be what we would consider for queen replacement. Okay, so we talked about a good brood pattern. Good queen will have a solid brood pattern. Another thing I'm looking for is hive temperament. I've tolerated some of the comments before that didn't sound right, nasty, aggressive. I mean, everybody in here that's had these for a couple of years, you might have encountered that. And I'll tell you, sometimes if you do, this is just a draw and straw. I mean, same queen, you can have a temperamental one that just, that you actually pull the grass from. You might have great temperamental ones, and there's just one that's kind of nasty. I have a quick fun story where we had one in our own home yard. Actually, my wife stopped the girl that makes this, but this Tom was an absolute producer. That thing only had maybe around 16 hives at that point in time, so I really didn't have that many. And I wasn't about to remove any queen that was producing huge numbers and producing big crops. This queen was doing it. I own a landscaping company, so during the day I'm very, very busy. And sometimes I don't get back to do management until later in the evening. Well, this was one of those days. Anybody that has ever dealt with a queen who, or a colony that's a little bit aggressive, the time that you don't want to go in them is at night or later in the evening, because all those forager bees are back there, the temperament of the hive changes. Well, I needed to do a few things, and I was trying to finish my manipulations. It was almost dark. And the queens or the entrance of which popped out, and this thing was so cool and heavy, super fun. I'm trying to get the entrance of which back in. I usually leave my instructions on the bar, but everything I usually leave them there. So anyway, I said, hey, babe, come back here. I need you to help me. I mean, I was literally putting the whole new box up. It's that heavy. She comes back there, has her jacket on, and I'll tell you what, the first thing right out of the gate is these bees are attacking her right in her midsection. And she gets lit up. I'm trying to smoke these bees down because as soon as I pop the top on these, set these girls off, already a little bit aggressive, set them off, trying to get this introducer in there, and she's howling at me and yelling at me, and I'm trying to smoke the bees seconds, and I'm smashing by, and she's like, me! She's like, smoke me! Just calm down for a minute, and try to notice this here. If she would have had a knife, I probably would have been scared. So, you know what, maybe guys, sometimes need to cheat their battles, maybe I should just stop. It was anyway, yeah, so that was kind of my fun story, but anyway, she's like, you're gonna get rid of that queen, and I said, no, I'm not. I said, but what I will do, I'll move them out to a different yard, and you don't have to touch them, but I'm like, as long as these girls are producing hot and heavy, I'm gonna keep them. My mind's changed a little bit. I don't like to deal with that as much anymore, and it isn't because of getting stung. I don't really care that I was taking a handful of stings. It's not really a big deal for me as long as I'm not stung about here, right? Those are the sensitive spots. If they're good producers. But the one thing that I found is when I'm trying to do 30 or 35 pounds, I only have the X amount of time to manage 170 pounds in 1 week. I don't have time to deal with a colony that keeps boiling up to the top. Every time you smoke them down, boiling right back to the top. You're smashing these, you're making them more angry. It's a mission. So what I would tell you is, guys, this is probably more talking to you. If you have a queen that's extremely aggressive, right? Just give the queen a household test where you can come. And don't use those things that to properly replace. Which means those scratch them off because you're likely to have some form of aggression, right? So listen, I'll say this for you right now. Sometimes listen to what they are really this. She's going on. Okay, so requeening with queens that are older or poor performance, we kind of went over that. Ways to requeen, you can use the emergency queen method where again, you kind of put that walkway split, if you will, and then weird around as long as they have that right inch large inside there. If you feel really confident, grab them. I would urge anybody to try their hand at grabbing. And if you don't feel confident, well, I have a little plug for you. The Eastern Missouri Beekeepers, actually that's locked in, Mr. Corey Stevens, in my opinion, master grafting, master queen rearing, and I have a lot of respect for him. And I looks like we had dinner with him last night. Corey Stevens is coming to Missouri, and we are going to have a hands-on queen rearing class. My wife and I took this class 3 or 4 years ago down here in his home yard, actually, and I'm saying, well, we got a lot of money. That doesn't mean that you might be considering grafting leaders and taking your data to 150 colonies or selling them. But I'll tell you what, this is a really cool thing to understand is grafting. So pay attention to the EPA website. I believe it's going to be July 26th. It's a Saturday. I think it's last Saturday in July. Which seems like, well, I think we're time to do it, but I'll tell you what, Corey Stevens is busy, and that's the only time I can be locking out. And trust me, I kept pestering him. So he's gonna be doing a community class, and we're going to have to do like 30 something. So pay attention to the website, it's gonna be posted here before too long. Pay attention to something you guys have restoration doing it. I would highly urge you to do that. Corey Stevens as a phenomenal grafter. And then lastly, purchase one. That's pretty easy. I will tell you that it seems like as things are going along and moving forward, we do it expensive. It's not unheard of. Maybe $50 or $60 for it now. And if you just find one or two that service them, you got to buy 100 of them. That starts to stay a little bit. Okay, so my wife told me a little bit about this because I talked a little bit about. I tried to utilize all my own pictures on everything, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about spring nectar flows, but what I'm showing you here is actually not spring flowers. Those are all fall flowers. The wind stem, the ironweed, those are all fall flowers that you'll find in garden beds, field sides, things of that nature. So just in case people don't understand the certain nectar sources that we do have here in Missouri, we have a lot of great ones, by the way. I think we have really been a great state for a lot of different diversity of plants, pollen, and nectar included. So a few of them up there we talk about, and I kind of put them in order. Witch hazel bee would be something that you would notice popping in probably about that late January, February mark. I don't think it's limited anymore. Michael and I were talking a little bit about that, and I don't know. He was talking about how we've seen them near him, but I don't know if it's actually still dandelion. Hasn't quite hit it. You might see one or two right here. So I'm going to tell myself a little bit. So I own a landscaping company. This is kind of what I do for. I spray these things. Don't shoot me, but I have propagated plenty of clover-based fields just like that. But if you can tolerate it, and you don't have to have that perfect manicured yard. Believe it or not, dandelion is a great nectar source, and it's a great source of pollen and protein for the bees. So if you can tolerate it, leave it in there. Willow is another tree that hits really early as far as pollen. Elm and maple, those are both hitting right now. So we've seen a lot of that bright yellow coming in, or even that little faint green. Faint green would be elm. Maple has some of that kind of bright yellowish, and I'm seeing sheets of it coming in right now. So those are two that are hitting really hot. Both of them happen to be producing nectar, more the maple than the elm. Henbed or dead nettle, those are the two flowers you see pop up. And they kind of, I didn't put any pictures up there, forgive me. You can look those up on the internet. Those haven't hit yet, but small plants and they're still growing. I would say that probably within about 10 days, maybe 7 to 10 days of blooming. Little small weed, if you will, that are growing sometimes. Field areas, unmanicured lawns, things of that nature. You'll notice those. Another really good nectar source from the tree. The tulip poplar is actually one that produces kind of like a reddish dark color of nectar. Really good honeymoon. And I actually produce a lot of that with our with some of the counties that we have in gardens. And then of course, if you haven't heard of black locust, you just haven't been a beekeeper. That's kind of like our premium crop, if you will. The black locust, and of course clover. And there are several different clovers out there that are great forage materials. Some of those you might see like a white Dutch, you can see here a lot. You get to some of those crimson clovers and or the red clovers, those are probably more like your field type areas because they require a little bit more high for your those are just a few of the nectar sources you might see here in springtime. So timing of nectar flows, like I said, I kind of highlighted them as the season would progress as far as each one of those planties is concerned. There's a large array of plants and nectar sources that we have, from wildflowers to trees and everything in between. So again, talking about having plenty of super zones to alleviate that congestion, if you will. When our main nectar flow hits, it seems like it's like trickling along, and then all of a sudden, boom, within a few days, they're adding just seems like gallons of nectar. Now, I've watched robust colonies I've had during the right conditions, where they had plenty of fly time during the day, little to no rain. Plenty of rain in the front side, but then they have to start pulling together the nectar. They can fill up a super in short of 3 or 4 days. Especially if cones drawn. If you don't have cones drawn, it may take a little bit longer than that. But again, understand if you have drawn cone, this can happen pretty quickly. These are a couple of wildflowers that we have. You would generally see these in probably field type areas or along tree lines, things like that. The goldenrod, of course, and then the wing stem, those are both great nectar producing plants in the fall. Sometimes we don't see a lot of nectar from them because again, our falls tend to be a little bit dry from time to time. I haven't seen goldenrod come in where I'm at, or if it has, it's been very, very little, but I've never seen any large crops. It's probably been a couple of years since I've seen it, but again, you can still gain great pollen for those colonies. Okay, so let's kind of break it down a little bit. Our spring checklist. You're looking for your early spring inspection. What that looks like on each of the colonies. Feeding, if necessary. You don't need to be feeding if the bees from granted plenty of nectar. Don't be concerned about them. Bees are going to prefer that anyway. You mix up some sugar syrup, they're not going to take it. So pay attention to that. Disease and pest monitoring, talked about swarm prevention, adding more space, and then queen management. So these are all the things that will kind of help you to ensure success throughout your springtime management, because again, it seems like that once we get into spring, the things go by very quickly. I thought this was a really good one. You know, I'm like, what really gives me a feeling of, you know what, I have actually reached the pinnacle of my life. And this is it. When your bees come out of winter, you're like, I am the king, right? What ways of the old, you know, that's really kind of it there. So that's kind of what I really have as far as my spring management there and the they're really looking for. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything that I didn't explain well enough or things that I didn't highlight or hit on.
Start getting rid of old lines.
Oh, so she brings a really good question. You're going to ask, this is one of those things again, you're going to ask one person a question and you're going to get all different kinds of answers. So this is the way that I would do it. So I'm going to give you my opinion because there's oh, I'm sorry. She asked about when should you rotate out colors. You know, how long would you let it come in before you would consider not using it? I kind of look at it like this. If it's a comb that's been on the outside, we can just sort of honey it more, and you haven't heard as much fruit in the second comb. So every time we clean lazy thing, it hurts to be small and she continues to lay in it, and then again, and every root cycle we have, what begins are inside. We don't look at it, you'll notice that the frame that has just recently had dry on it feels very, very light. It's just almost like the frame itself. You pick up a frame that's been in a box for 4 or 5, 6 years, maybe even longer than that, and the cells are no longer that hexagon, the more kind of that round shape, and the wall is really thick, and you pick up the phone, you're like, wow, there's nothing in it, and that's heavy. That's probably a good time to use. To put a number on it, I really don't know that there's a magic number when it comes to the age of the cones. So if I notice that it looks like the cones getting heavy for myself, and or there's a lot of cocoons in it, I was like, well, you can use it for a swarm box, you know, things like that. The color will get very, very dark, almost black. And I'll just say, you know, something to consider with wax and cone too is that's kind of like the liver. So that stores all those toxins. So even though you might think that they were like, well, my bees have been herbicides and pesticides, you'd be surprised. And I'm not saying they're all bad, but over time, I think what you find is if you have more toxins when they're in that frame cell, I think that it's a really good idea to slowly start building some new colonies. If you had a hive for 4 or 5 years, not just because it's not, look at those cells. They look really, really thick and long. That's what I think. So that's what it's.
So, sir,
Yeah, he has a microphone for you.
so, sir, is not by volume, but by weight?
Correct. When you're mixing sugar and water together, you're mixing it up by weight. So at a 2-to-1, it's 2 parts sugar, 1 part of water. And that's going to be roughly about 66–67% solids. And that's going to be about the heaviest that I found. You can mix up regular sugar or table sugar. Now, if you chose to take high fructose corn syrup, you can probably get those solids up around 87%. So they get to the thicker. People do feed. I've been fortunate enough to go find out more sugar, which I prefer feed rather over high fructose corn syrup. Bob Bay actually has a really good video with not to be double. Lewis Spark, actually they do a great video where he studied the effects of high fructose corn syrup and sucrose and what that looks like. It's not horrible to feed high fructose. But all in all, sucrose is best, but that's kind of what we look by weight, not by volume.
The other question I had is the volume of resource plots.
Yeah.
What are resource plots?
Okay, so that's basically like, let's just say you build, it's basically like another nucleus colony. So, you know, when I say nucleus colony, some people don't think about what it is. Nucleus colony, take your hive, take a part out of it, that's a nucleus colony. So nucleus is just a smaller version. They can get 3 frame, or 4 frame, 5 frame. Most of the time when you hear nucleus, people can refer to 5 frames. That's pretty traditional word your nucleus colony. But when I say part of it, you're gonna have a queen with several different stages of brood in there, captain on them. Food resources, and all those workers in there are purged. So it's a cohesive pot. It isn't just when you take some brood frames and put in there. Once that becomes cohesive and she starts laying in there and putting all the little workers back, is my opinion. That's so like when you build one, let's say you actually use those 2 to 3 frames of brood food, and you put it clean in. You really have to let that thing grow for at least a solid 3 weeks before. At least me, I won't turn this to before then, because I want to make sure that that queen is laid in those cells, the brood pattern looks good, and they've gotten to the point where they're capped. I know at that point, if I see cap brood in there, it looks really good, that's when you start getting that cohesive. So that's kind of what I'm looking for when I see the resource. So you can actually then take that, start that little nuke off the side. Let's just say when your production columns actually goes cleans, where something happens, you can actually take that entire nucleus. On a clean side, there's a few different things you want to work with on that, but you can actually plug the nucleus colony right in the middle of that. Again, there's a few procedures you want to work toward, but then you can keep your colony just moving straight along. You know, so if you build it off to the side, maybe you don't want to keep it, but just understand that sometimes the tough part of summer or fall can really kind of start to show these queens are really made of quality. And sometimes it means a good time or a good idea to queen with the younger queen. Or one that's more vibrant and people. So that's why we would say resource, but the basis is a term for a nucleus colony. Yeah, there's one.
So on these splits, do you put the split colony right next to the old colony or somewhere else in the yard?
Yeah, so he asked on the split, if you in the same yard, you move it away. So I'll say this, I've done both, and there's really not a right one, but what I will say is this. If you make a split, and you leave that in the same yard, all those storage bees that have been out of the hive originally, they know where they're at, they're gonna fly out there at some point in time and go right back to the colony. So understand, when you make a split, when I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to grab nurse bees on those frames, because those nurse bees are what's gonna rear the next generation moving forward. So if you do leave it in the same yard, those bees will fly out and fly there. So you may lose a small percentage depending on what frames you put in there and what bees you kind of shape in there. If you decide to move it away and put it in there, sometimes you hang on to those storage bees. If you move it more than 3 miles, because they say generally to get 3 miles is what a bee flies storage. Depends on the time of the year. I've seen where in the springtime I've moved them a mile away and I didn't lose some population. It's telling those bees probably get foraging over. As the spring and summer wears on, you may find that those bees will fly a little further, or maybe more familiar with the surroundings beyond that. So again, you can go either way. I will say this, I've noticed that queen acceptance will go up in a split or a colony when you have less of the older grumpy bees in there. You might all those three guys, yeah, beetle in their grunts. When you have less of those in there, they're more tolerant. So nurse bees, especially ones that are emerging on the comb, don't know they're queen yet. So if you actually put a bunch of cat brood in there and you introduce a queen, your acceptance goes through the roof, because those bees emerging don't know a specific queen. The one that's in there is their queen. You know what I'm saying? It's a very accepting of it. So again, it depends on how you would like to approach that. I really don't see a right or wrong way to do that. But just understand if you have the problems or your bees in there, sometimes your acceptance of the queen can go down.
Okay, and then the second question, on entrance producer, it seems like you get basically reset small hole, large hole, and completely know what to produce.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
So he asked about the entrance producer, small hole, take it completely out, and use all that free boards. I mean, how do you use it? That really, so these are one of those details I think that don't really matter a lot. Sometimes we focus on some of the details that I think make a huge difference. I'll tell you what I do, I just use the big mail here. So I run mainly Italian bees. Italian bees are brood monsters, they don't really quit. You can chase the bee hose all summer long, they just brood and brood and brood and brood, but they're great at producing nucleus colonies to sell or to increase your population. They're also phenomenal honey producers, so they don't quit, right? Other genetics of honeybees like Corniolan or some of these other different types of trait sensitive bees, they might be a little more conservative when it comes to that. So I'm sorry, I lost track of what I said that. Introduce it. Yeah. So basically I said all that just to say robbing can occur. Italians are very good at robbing. So when you read later in the season and there's no nectar flow going on, and I'll say, if you're around this nectar flow, well, they're putting honey from you or still some sugars are from flathead in your truck. You'll find out if there's nectar flow. If they hit it within a few minutes, there's nothing. If they haven't touched it all day long, there's been great honey out there, they're finding nectar. That's good. So I actually leave mine on the 3 or 4 to stay on your run just to help relieve the pressure. I have never noticed. Now I'll say this: some people get really concerned about bees breeding on the front of the colony. Honestly, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. It's basically when there's no nectar flowing, the bees are seeing coming out of the front porch. Those are called the forage bees. They have nothing to do. So basically, it's outside the hive because they're not trying to create more heat within the colony. Now, I'm not someone who your entrance producer. Some people pull it out and wide open, big pathway going out. I've never seen the bee on a 3/4 inch opening on the front of the colony because the bee can go through a 3/8 stage just fine. So it's not personal preference. I just leave mine in. I've never noticed such congestion in the front that they can't produce good honey, crops and stuff there. So I think that's one of those details that, it's not a huge deal. I will say this. The time that it is probably more of a bigger deal if you have a really small colony and you have it in the same yard with other bigger colonies. Those bees will beat up on that colony horribly if you like. Turn that into the smallest traits. That would be something I really need to say.
Well, you're right.
So when is the time switching from patties to the 2-to-1 ratio? And if I had to with patties, what do I do?
Okay, so you're asking about fondant, basically, the sugar feed, the fondant coming out in winter time. Typically, I just let them finish up with the fondant patties myself, or the winter fondant patties. You don't have to. I just let them finish it off because I don't want to try to store it. And they've already eaten mostly on it, especially as they're rearing all this brood, they'll consume it very, very quickly moving forward. I don't continue to put them on, usually this time of the year. What I would probably do is I'd move straight over to feed. If you're gonna feed a 2-to-1, which is fine, you can do that. Just understand that'll add a lot of weight to the colony quickly. So if a colony is lacking in those honey frames that we talked about, let's say there's 3 or 4 frames of brood. If you don't have 3 or 4 frames of honey up there, that's, you can feed it a 2-to-1 ratio or that heavier thick syrup ratio, because they're not just going to use that syrup feed. They're going to have to dilute it down, by the way, in order to use it. They'll actually add water to it. So bees need water more than we really think about. Just an FYI, I know I didn't really mention that, but bees need water as much as they need the other, nectar sources, pollen, protein. So basically, I just usually leave them on there and let them finish them off in the winter. Now, if those were gone and you notice you don't have a lot of honey frames up top, and there's like 3 or 4 frames of brood, I would start to feed them. If you choose to use 2-to-1, that's fine. You'll add a lot of weight going into those combs. 1-to-1 just works just fine too. So, I mean, either one are going to get the job done. Just pay attention because you don't want to start feeding so much when other nectar's coming in, even if they're taking it. Say the nectar is kind of hit and miss, in the springtime, maybe you got some cold snap and they're not taking it, and then a couple days they are. If you start filling all those combs up inside there with wet nectar and or sugar feed and she runs out of room to lay, that swarming impulse will start to hit hard. So just pay close attention to that when you're feeding. So when you're feeding, feed for a purpose. Make sure that they need it. Don't just do it just to keep them in that stimulative mode, because the nectar sources will do just fine on that.
Do you have any other tips to prevent robbing other than the entrance reducer?
So I've never used them myself, but you know, if you have 1 or 2 or 3 colonies, it's probably not a big deal. They sell like basically like raw meats that you can put on the front. Jade sells those. That's nice because what it causes is the robber bees want to come into the entrance. They can smell that nectar. They can smell that potentially weaker hive, and will try to gain access. What it actually forces them to do is it forces them to walk up in front of the base of the colony, and then that exit that way. So it's basically like tricking the bees that don't belong there. That kind of keeps them out. That's probably a pretty good tool or a pretty good method, is using one of those robber screens, and you can put them on and take them off as you see fit. But particularly, you know, when we get into fall here around St. Louis, and let's be honest, sometimes it just gets brutally dry. We just don't get enough rain. You know, you might still see a bloom hitting, and maybe it's producing a little bit of pollen, you know, come the in the fall or the early winter, but it may not be producing much nectar out there. And you know, that's the really critical time. I see 2 real critical times. One, early spring coming out of winter, make sure they have plenty of storage, because they will consume food stores this time of year as that brood is being produced. The second most important time, and I really see that, is late in the fall, when you really need to gain as much weight to that colony as possible. I would just say, I run on 8-foot equipment. So on a double brood box, I'd like to see that entire top box pretty much plugged out. I mean, if it's capped, that's better. If not, you know, you have to have some feed in there. I'd like to see all of those top 8, or maybe you guys' case and time frames up there. I like to see them all plugged out, because eventually, as it goes to winter, those bees will continue to move up into that feed. They've got plenty of feed both ways. So that's kind of what I would look for. Anybody else?
So in springtime, do you treat for the row before you split or after you split?
So what I've done in the past, actually, so I really work hard in making sure that my counts are down. I'd like to see zeros in my washes, right? Just like us all would. And that's kind of what I strive for, because going through winter, I usually do at least 2, if not 3, rounds of exotic acid vapor. It's kind of one of my most favorite treatments to use. It's cheap. I can use it very quickly. I've got a couple tools that make it happen very fast. So that's what I really like to utilize, is the exotic acid vapor going through winter. So my idea coming out of winter, and I can always check, and I don't always check every single colony, but I like to check a percentage of them in each yard to see what my mite counts are coming into spring. But I'm working off the assumption a lot that I'm having them really, really low. What I have started to do in nucleus colonies is, as I then make my split, and I'm using mostly cat brood, from that point in time, as those bees are emerging, I add my queen in there. When that queen is accepted and she starts laying, so on the overlap between the times that all that original brood is now emerging, and before all that new young eggs and larvae are getting ready to be capped, I'll hit it with exotic acid vapor. So now my treatment's like 98% effective. So now, after the queen has been accepted, you know, and laying, then I can hit it with exotic acid vapor. And I usually do like 1 round to them, and that ideally will knock everything back down to close to 0. So that's kind of the method that I use, and I'm going to continue to use moving forward. One of my favorite treatments is probably the exotic acid. They've shown that you can dump, and I'm not promoting this because there are rules as far as the state and stuff go. You can dump a lot of grams of exotic acid vapor to a colony and not hurt it whatsoever. So I'm a pretty big fan of it. Another thing that's cool about exotic acid is it doesn't last in the combs. If you talk about what hangs out in the combs, it's almost untraceable within 24 to 48 hours. If you try to test those combs, it's almost untraceable inside it. So that's my method. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Extension of that, the extent pops out.
Oh yeah, so extended release pad for exotic acid. Forgive me, I forget the name of what that product is out there. Peroxium. So I've never used it, but this is something that I'm going to start utilizing this year. I was actually talking with Jim Masucci just the other day and picking his brain about it. So there's actually a video out there. I encourage everybody to go watch. There's a guy named Greg Rogers. He's actually from Asheville, North Carolina. He's actually a commercial operator that runs about 300 properties. He's getting a little bit older in age and been doing this a long time. He actually did a study with the University of Georgia, I think it was, or under their direction, actually. And he made his own pads and utilized it for colonies. He actually has a great video. I think it's with Bob Benny. Melissa, is that right? Bob, you may have to look up, Bob Daly on YouTube, but again, look for Ray Rogers, he put this information out last year. And he talks about exactly how many pads you're gonna use. I'm not telling anybody that you're gonna go out and make your own, but I'm just saying, it is possible. Baroxin is very expensive, but again, I like the idea of it because again, I sell like oxalic acid. Oxalic acid again shows virtually no effects in the colonies after about 24 or 48 hours, even with these pads that are utilized in that. And basically what it does is it's not a knockdown treatment. It doesn't take microbes from out here or not. But what you do is you might use a different medication, if you will, and you knock these microbes in. And what you do is come back after that and you use these strips, and it helps to maintain that. Because even after you do your summer treatment, say July, which is generally what I do, I like to use Apiguard, which is the final release treatment. Be cautious with the middle of the heat summer, and you can have problems with that too. There's always trade-offs, but again, I like to use that. You can then follow up with potentially using these strips. I would urge everybody to follow the label. That's the reason it's on there. But using these strips back, and you're going to maintain the microbes. So if you use a knockdown treatment like Thymol, or some other juice, whatever you decide to use, and you get it knocked down to a very manageable level, so 1%, you can utilize these Baroxin pads inside the colony to keep the microbes in. I've watched the before this, and you get these microbes knocking in, say after July, there's still plenty of brood being here in August, September, and maybe even into November. These are all periods of time when all these rows still continue to increase. So just because you put a treatment on, it'll just seem that it works. I personally think that could be part of the problem that some of these commercial operators might be experiencing with these big losses. There's a treatment out there that actually is shown to have the row mice themselves, or actually somewhat it's not working as well. So we don't know specifically that that's what it is. It's a hunch that I could be a possibility or a leading possibility of supply. But again, my job, use these mic washes. I like to be, around the time of COVID, you couldn't get a hold of the alcohol, right? 91% alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. The gentleman up in New York, or no, California, scientific beekeeping. Randy Allen, thank you. He actually has some great information on there about utilizing the dog method, which is really cheap, by the way, and they've shown it's very, very effective. It'll pull those lines off of those bees. So I would urge everybody, don't make an assumption of what your microbes are. Check it, see what they are, and then treat accordingly based on temperatures and what type of treatment you choose to use. But check them and do something about it. You want to have healthy bees going into winter. Any other questions? Okay, I think that's it for me. Yes, Dan, you got it. Thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. All right. We're gonna have a raffle. You trust me to pull the ticket out, or we need a volunteer? And the winner is 6872537. 6872537. There's the winner there. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, that's.
Well, thank you. You can verify it.
All right, that's pretty much it for this evening, except